This is Mandatory Listening. I'm your host, Kent Mann. Each week, we sit down over a cup of coffee and discuss interesting topics in the world of the customer experience. Welcome back to Mandatory Listening. This is Kent Mann. I'm joined again by Leslie Cunningham. Good afternoon, Leslie.
Good afternoon.
Because it is not the morning. We were always recording the afternoon, it seems.
It's a new thing.
Yep. I'm not going to surprise you with books today.
Okay, good.
So you don't have to have a stack right next to you to read off of.
Thank you.
But I'm actually just coming off of an intense game of ping pong with Dan. And so I was wondering, because people have sometimes said that I get intense with ping pong or, it's just, I just want to play. I just want to hit the ball back and forth. And that's totally, cool. And in the environment where I learned to play ping pong in college, it was just a bunch of dudes hanging out and we were just trying to beat each other. And so I was wondering about your opinion on the spirit of competition and what that creates among people. Because in the example of ping pong, I never would have enjoyed it as a sport or gotten really good at ping pong if it wasn't for that competition. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about fostering healthy competition, what's your stance on that?
Do I have to have a stance?
You don't have to have a stance, no. You have to have a very clear opinion and you have to fight other people in their opinion. No, I'm kidding.
I have never been a competitive person.
Yeah.
Which, as I think about it, I ask myself, is that really true? Because there are things that I'm competitive about.
Yeah. Like what?
Well, I was just thinking when I said that, I'm pretty competitive when it comes to sales. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it is not necessarily sales, but I'm competitive about just get it done. And if I need to step in and get it done, then I'm going to do that because I just want to get things done.
Yeah.
And so that maybe is perceived as competition.
Yeah.
But to play a ping pong match with the ability to win is just not, I'm going to be a goofball.
Yeah.
For example, I played golf in high school and I was not good at golf, but I wanted my letter. And so I learned how to play golf, but I was always paired. I was always the last person. And in golf, you pair the worst person with the best person. Mm-hmm. So I didn't blow off my putts or my drives, but I just was never as good as the person I was playing against. And so I was able to really hone in on my skills, but I was never in competition with the person.
So what's the alternative for skills development besides competition? So if you want to get really good at something, you could just practice all day by yourself, but that's not real life competition. That's not real life improvement. That's in a scenario almost.
Competition has a real negative...
It does. The word itself brings up a lot of negative feelings.
Right now, it's like my stomach gets real turned. Competition feels aggressive. Mm-hmm. But I'm also a very aggressive person. I'm determined.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that competition doesn't have to be aggressive if it's framed in the spirit of improvement. So you can compete and be a good sport. And I think that's what it's always been called. But even that's kind of hard to define. And even then you can easily cross the line of being overly competitive or non-sportsmanlike. You know, you can see it in sports games all the time where people yell when they score a point or scream or throw their paddle or the football down or whatever. And that's not, everyone's like, oh, what an unsportsmanlike guy.
But is it unsportsman or is it being present in the moment and just feeling that passion?
Yeah, I have no idea. Because I know when I'm in the middle of an intense ping pong game, even if the person scores an awesome point on me, I'm just
thrilled.
So excited just to witness that.
Yeah, it was, we did that yesterday and I was like, oh, there was I had maybe 2 shots that were really beautiful and you celebrated that.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, again, playing golf, I was paired up with the state champion and she was really good, but just having an off day. Mm-hmm. And so she was really angry that I was beating her. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how I was beating her because, again, I'm not a good golf player. And she at one point took her putter to tee off. Mm-hmm. with a ball just to throw the game away.
Yeah.
Which, in my opinion, or my perception was that she was not being a good citizen. She was not rallying. She was just
not digging deep.
Yeah. And it was unsportsmanlike, if you will.
Yeah. We always want the people who are either the underdog or the people who are like, oh my gosh, this person was ranked last and they're killing the people who are up front.
Yeah.
It's just almost it's why we watch movies. It's why we read motivational books or whatever. It's because we want to see someone emerge when they shouldn't.
Yeah.
And not just emerging, but also be a good sport while doing it.
Yeah.
Not like rubbing it in someone else's face.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just, that's not the topic for today's podcast. I mean, even though it's a good topic. Yeah. But I just want to, for anyone in a collaborative environment, especially as it relates to income or revenue, take a second look at what competition means to you. Because if you have a negative association, because people have had horrible competitive experiences and it just, any sort of competition just is toxic to them. But I also think it's useful in developing skills. It really makes you, because if you're invested in something, you can't be competitive if you're not invested in it.
Yeah.
Because you don't care enough in order to want to win. Or want to succeed.
Improve, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to take a second look and hear your opinion on that.
Well, thank you.
But let's get into the real topic of this podcast.
Which actually ties in really well, because I think what you just did was brought about two different ways of looking at the word competition and what that evolves in either our judgment or our perception as good or bad.
Yeah.
And what we're going to be talking about today is that there is no good or bad. There's no right or wrong. But we have, as a society, as human beings, created judgments that we have the ability to understand what people are saying based on their tone of voice or based on their body language, their appearance. And I'm here to dialogue with you about we have to change this. We have to change this as a society in a way of being, because we're really losing the art of real, true human connection.
So where did this come up to you?
So this came up for me a long time ago, and I've been digging into it for about 10 years now as it relates to how we manage people and how we interact, particularly on a retail sales floor, and or if you're at a restaurant and watching the way that people interact with you. So, for example, I oftentimes will ask people when we're talking about this, have you ever met someone who doesn't look you in the eye when they're talking to you?
We all have.
And when you pause and watch the reaction in the room of people, I would say 98% of the people in the room are disgusted. Like, oh my gosh, that's the most terrible thing in the world. And well, why? What does that mean? When someone's not looking you in the eye, what does that mean?
Well, I know in other cultures around the world, it's just a sign of respect.
Right.
To not look someone in the eye.
Right.
If you talk about canines, you're not supposed to look the alpha in the eye.
Well, and in our society, it's a sign of disrespect.
Yeah.
It's a sign that someone's not listening to you.
Yeah.
And I would like to counter that with, that might not necessarily be true. And so if we're already going into a conversation with someone who is not looking us in the eye, maybe they have their phone up, or maybe they're distracted and or have had a really bad day, then we're going in with our judgment and perception. So we're already have built a wall going, oh, they already disrespect me. Therefore, I'm going to carry a cadence for a conversation that is full of disrespect, or have my wall up versus seeking to understand what's really truly happening. Because there are people in the world where when they're processing information, they have to look down so that they can actually process the information. Has nothing to do with respect or disrespect.
So what is the potential downfall of assuming that someone who's looking down or not looking you in the eye is disinterested in what you're saying? Like, why is it, quote unquote, human nature, or maybe, in the United States, our nature to assume that we know what someone else is thinking because they're not looking us into the eye?
It's a condition. We've been conditioned to believe that we're good people watchers.
So is it that people who make that assumption are saying, I've seen this enough times to know that this person's not interested in me, so just exposure to it?
Experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So why is it that it's just a culture thing? If it's different around, like, what is it about the United States that makes us feel like we are good people watchers? Or do you think it's worldwide? It's just a human phenomenon?
I think, and I haven't studied other cultures, so
Yeah.
this will be an answer that I've not done research around. But I would make an assumption, as though I'm trying to challenge us not to do, that there are other factors in other cultures that allows us to have the judgment and the walls up in order to protect ourselves from true human connection.
Why are we trying to protect ourselves from that?
Because it's vulnerable.
We've been burned one too many times.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a conditioning. And so I think that in order to be really impactful as leaders in a society, and it's just not valuable anymore to have a true human connection. But I'd like to challenge that, because I think we're at a place in society, especially in retail, when we're exchanging money and commerce in the restaurant industry, and we're forced to have a connection. Why not have a really true human connection and not based off of assumptions?
Well, let's say, for example, I'm on a sales floor, or I'm approaching a table that I'm about to serve, and I'm their waiter. If I start talking to somebody or approaching somebody and asking them what they're looking at, or what brings them in today, or would you like to see appetizers, or do you know what you want to eat? And someone is not looking me in the eye, because we're going to continue to use that example. Should I just pretend like they're not doing that? Do I just continue with my normal enthusiasm? Because I think, like, the problem is that you seem disinterested in what I'm saying, so I'm also going to be disinterested and not serve you in the way that you would like to be served, or the way that is around our company culture, or whatever it is. So what do I do?
I think the first step is being aware. Oh, I'm going into defense mode because I'm perceiving that this person is not interested because they're not looking at me.
Right.
Now, part of that might be true, but I think part of that, we have to begin to get back to ourselves and know ourselves.
Yeah.
And so if we're in dialogue in our mind about somebody else's behavior, we're not paying attention to our own selves and what we might be projecting outward. And so I think we have to start with catching ourselves doing it first, and then pointing it back to ourselves, calming ourselves down. I'll give you another example of I was presenting to 100 high school students, and there were 3 particular girls who were not only not paying attention, but goofing off, and were really, in my opinion and my assumptions, just somebody that I got really frustrated with. And it started to set the tone for my presentation a little bit, because I wanted to rally the entire group, but I was only focused on these 3.
You were trying to rally them,
misbehaving,
and you were ignoring 97 other people in the room.
That's right. And so I got through my presentation. I was able to get back to myself. And at the very end of the class, I had to reset it for the next group that was coming in. And these 3 girls came right up to me and said, "How can we help reset the room for you?" Everybody else had left. And so it really reminded me that it's a distraction to make judgments and assumptions. And it takes us outside of our center, outside of who we are, and prevents us from really being in the present moment, rather than getting outside and judging and being frustrated. That creates more drama, if that makes sense. And it's not accurate. The stories that we're telling ourselves are just that. They're stories. And then they become belief systems, and then they become a reality. And we have to think about and consider a new approach for human connection.
So what are some practical steps? Because I suffer from that too, in the sense of I almost feel like I need to snap my fingers or have like what is it?
A rubber band on your
rubber
wrist.
band or something just to remind you to wake up, you know, like get out of your own thoughts and you know, because your brain you is not the real you.
Correct.
The thoughts that your brain is telling yourself is not the real you.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we forget that.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to just get distracted in the minutia of just I've had such a bad day already. Oh my gosh, you know, whatever. And so what are some practical steps that you do to what is that rubber band for you, or the spinning top in Inception, really?
Yeah.
That's like wake up, you know, get back into the moment.
Part of it is how you feel. So if it's not feeling good, it's usually a judgment. And so I start there. How am I feeling? And
so you ask yourself, okay, what am I feeling right now?
does this thought make me happy?
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't, then I'm not in alignment with who I am as a human being. And generally, if I am in a dialogue about someone else and someone else's behavior, then I'm going down the path that I've been conditioned to believe is true. And so taking that approach and stepping back. Now, there's a lot of contributing factors that come into play. And you said it earlier, and that is, I've had a really bad day, can contribute. If you're tired or stressed, it's harder to snap yourself out of it and get back into the present. I have, since I had my daughter, have always adopted the timeout principle for myself. And so when I get really tense and I can feel it in my body, I go and put myself in timeout. And I take either a walk, or I go up into a private place and I just begin to breathe and feel my breath and do my breath work to get myself back to center. If I can take a walk in nature, that generally will lift the minutia of my head. But it is a mind practice, and a new practice that I'm learning is to be able to control your thoughts at nighttime before you go to bed. Lay in your bed and practice backwards what you did that day as a way of training your brain to have more control of your thoughts. Because we're a society that's addicted to thoughts. I think Eckhart Tolle says that.
Yeah.
And so when we can stop the thinking, then we can get back to center and go, okay, I need to own this. And this is my story, not their story. I don't know what's happening to you. I don't even know what kind of day you had today, Kent. So how can I sit here and go, he is totally disrespecting me right now.
Oh, bless his heart.
Oh, bless your heart.
His heart. He's had a bad day.
And if we can get out of that mode, I think that we will begin to have really good human connections, particularly with the people that we work with day in and day out. I mean, think about how many hours we spend together at work. And a lot of that is consumed by other people's poor performing behaviors as we are interpreting them, not necessarily a reality, just because we all approach life differently as far as how we communicate.
So, you know, the part of me wants to just pose the question of, is there a time when we can try to interpret what someone else is feeling by asking them? Is it better or is that not interpreting? Because a lot of times you can feel somebody's enthusiasm, or you can feel like, because, you know, body language is a huge part of communication and listening. So how do we use it without making assumptions?
That's
by
really
saying,
good.
You know, I can just tell something's going on, like what's going on.
So I have a situation in my life right now where anytime I get a text from a particular person, I read the text and immediately react negatively towards whatever they say. They could have just said, hello, have a great day, and I would be pissed.
Yeah.
So, and they've done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And so part of what I am practicing, and I think is what you're asking, is catching yourself in interpretation versus what is fact-based.
Yeah, and being, you know, having empathy.
Yeah.
You know, being able to, because some people, Or, I mean, obviously, we said at the beginning, a lot of people think that they're really good at interpreting what people are feeling or what they're thinking. And so, how can we have that really nice, the paradoxical blend of professional will and personal humility of, yeah, I can interpret and understand my team's emotions, and I understand when I'm overworking people or underworking people, or you get that emotion side of it. But also we have expectations, and I'm not attached to the emotion because we're a company and we have to get things done. So I'm just wondering, what is the appropriate way to have that empathy? Is it to ask? Is it to ask what's going on today? How are you feeling today? Something's going on. What's up? What do you see what I'm saying? Like, what's the day-to-day, not assumption, but concern for someone's feelings?
I think it is asking.
Okay.
And not projecting.
So as opposed to changing your behavior based on what you think about them, instead just asking them.
Yeah. I think it saves a lot of time and energy when you approach life that way versus interpretation.
Yeah.
Interpretation is really based on how you're doing and feeling about the situation.
Yeah.
It doesn't have anything to do with the person that you're with. Now, I would love to maybe at some point dive into this idea that we can feel how other people are doing.
Yeah.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but what would life be like if we just focused on ourselves? If we just focused on how we feel versus getting connected, you seem down today.
Yeah.
I don't know that for sure, but I'm sensing that you're feeling down.
Yeah. And like you said too, I resonate with the fact that you said projecting, because because I know this for myself, if someone asks me, what's going on today? Something's wrong. Like, what's wrong? I almost feel like now something is wrong.
Yeah.
I have to feel defensive almost.
Yes.
And so then I think it is projecting that. So, I don't even know how the best way to do that in a professional setting would be, especially from thinking about a boss asking an employee, how are you feeling today? Or what's up? I can tell something's wrong. I don't know the best way to approach that, or is that even appropriate? Certainly it depends on the culture of the company, and, if it's an office space or just a retail space or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say, but I think it is important.
I think there's a place for it as long as you're...
HR.
Yeah. As long as you're not interpreting or creating more drama than necessary.
Right.
If it's because performance is slowing down or you're not getting the results, that becomes a different type of conversation. If you're just having a connection for the sake of having a connection, then I think it's totally appropriate.
Yeah.
I do think you have to be very careful in this day and age in asking those types of questions when you ask those types of questions.
Yeah.
Because it's really none of your business.
Yeah. True. Yeah, that's true.
So I think for the sake of this conversation, it's just laying out the fact that we all have our unique thumbprint. And as unique as our thumbprint is, we are as unique in the way that we communicate. And we are very intricate human beings, and we all have a footprint in how we communicate. And there is no right or wrong way. There are people who rub you the wrong way. I mean, I'm certain that you can list off a handful of people that you just don't want to spend time with because they waste all of your energy.
Yeah, Dan Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we probably should have a conversation with him.
Yeah.
And why is that? Why does that happen? And
why do you let that happen?
Yeah.
Because you're really giving them all the power in saying, you ruined my day.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
you physically ruined my entire day today.
Yep.
It's not a way I think that we want to be as human beings because we do crave that connection with each other.
There's something, it's just, there are some times during the day, sometimes multiple times in a day, sometimes it doesn't happen for, a week or two, where you just feel really, you can brush anything off. Like it just, nothing affects you. It's just amazing. You take nothing personally. You don't project anything. No one projects anything onto you because you don't let them. And you just almost have this just glow. And it's really an amazing feeling. And then other times you just let every little thing affect you and every little thing get to you, and just one little stub toe away from just punching a hole through the wall or yelling or crying or whatever it is. And it's just the part of the awareness piece is knowing that those are going to happen.
Yes.
That you're going to have some peaks and you're also going to have, an equal amount of valleys. And so having those practical strategies of even just breathing or finding a good book that you can go back to, or having some alone time, or being around people for extroverted people.
Right.
Sometimes that energizes.
Whatever your approach is.
Yeah, whatever your approach is having those strategies that you can fall back on in the middle of a workday.
Go and play ping pong.
Yeah, ping pong is a big one for me, that's for sure, yeah. And so having those strategies of saying, okay, when I'm in a peak, I'm recognizing that with every peak comes a valley, and then in every valley, there's, same. It's just a cycle of life that we all just kind of go through these beats.
And we have the choice to either continue that path or go play ping pong or go take a nap.
Yeah.
Right? Like
you can sit there and live in it, or you can go do something about it.
Or change, but it's you changing you. It's not your surroundings changing you.
Yeah, or anyone, it's not anything else except for just you deciding to take one step forward.
That's right.
And so if we can always get back to there every time we have a peak or a valley.
Or a peak.
Or a peak. Yeah. Now we're talking, geography or... But yeah, I don't want to step too far away from this, the quote that you had propped up for this topic. So did you want to dive into that or address anything about this quote? I mean, you're going to say it, of course, but that you feel like we missed here?
So the quote is, we have been conditioned to believe that we are experts in interpreting what a person is communicating based on their body language, tone of voice, which creates justifications along with judgments to our approach to true human connection. The reason why I bring this up in my presentations is that there truly are no bad people. We are all working as hard as we possibly can to do the best that we possibly can.
Yeah.
And if we believe that that is a truth, which I do, and that there is no right or wrong, then how do we recondition ourselves? So I use the word reparent ourselves to a new way to get to human connection. And that's what I'm exploring. And so when we do the assessments that we use with people to really understand what I am projecting onto the environment that I'm in. So one of the things that I learned early on in my career is that I have the resting bee face. And I get very intense when I am determined to get things done. And I tell this story a lot because I had no idea, because I think I'm the nicest person on the planet. And anyone can approach me at any time. But when I look at my resting bee face, it's terrible. Like, I would not want to approach myself. And being aware of myself has really helped me manage myself and then my judgments based on what I perceive is happening with others, because it's just not true. And I don't ever want to... It doesn't feel good to believe that people aren't being the best that they possibly can.
Yeah.
Because I just don't buy into that theory any longer.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind when you say that is, if you want to change the world, you got to start with yourself.
That's right.
And, anyone who says that they have the answer for the world is, not right or wrong, but just...
They have an approach.
That
and a belief system.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, I think all of this to say is an awareness of starting with yourself and focusing on, what can I change right now when I'm frustrated, when I'm angry, what can I do? Not why won't these people do what I tell them to do? Or why won't this car start like I want it to? Why won't dinner cook itself? Why won't, whatever. And if we can just, instead of saying, why is this happening to me? Instead say, what can I do to change this?
What did I contribute to this situation? I think is a really good question to start asking when we're in conflict with other people.
Yeah. When we're not in a good place and we know we're not in a good place, something just feels wrong.
So I think that it's important to understand that from the standpoint of, we've gotten really good at pointing the finger at other people.
Yeah.
And in order to change that cycle, we have to be able to point the finger at ourselves and evaluate what we did in order to contribute to the anxiety of someone else that we're talking to.
Yeah. And when you're starting with yourself, really the only bad action is no action at all. Just constant movement forward.
Yeah.
Of instead of sitting there for 30 minutes dwelling and thinking and just, getting into this cycle where, why can't I stop thinking this way? Why can't this thought just leave my head already? Instead, just take a step forward.
Yeah.
Start moving.
Yeah.
Because the brain you, like I said, is not the real you.
That's
the real you is the one that moves.
And it knows how to make a connection if you allow the thought to stop.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is to ask yourself a question. So the question that I give people as a tool is, what more do I need to learn and understand about myself in this situation?
Yeah.
And then what part did I play?
Yeah.
So, and be very specific, because you have the answer within you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just about being open and being willing to change yourself first.
That's right.
Well, awesome, Leslie. I think this
Yay.
was a really good topic.
Yeah.
And according to my clock, I think it's happy hour.
Oh, sweet.
So what are you going to start with? A martini night?
It might be a real strong one tonight.
real
Extra
strong,
cold.
Yeah,
3
with
olives.
3 olives?
Yep.
Where did the 3 olives come from?
In design, you always want to have 3 of something on a table. And I think I just carry it on to, because it looks pretty when you have 3 of something. And so 3 olives, plus when I'm really hungry, 3 olives is really good.
And you just dip the olives in the vodka?
No, well, you can. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just eat them.
And you just eat them before you start drinking any of the vodka?
Yeah, you can. It depends.
Well, that's
on
what
my
you do,
mood.
right?
Yeah, it's like
I always notice that you just eat them right off the bat.
Well, if I'm super hungry, then yes.
Yeah.
And then I'll slip 3 more on.
Wow. You have an olive thing.
I do have an olive thing. It's not really about the vodka. It's about the olives.
Yeah. Well, after this, tonight we're leaving for the lake. So I'm going to be drinking some local Asheville IPAs.
Nice.
And really just enjoying myself.
Good. I
at
hope
the
you
lake.
do.
Yeah.
I hope you do. We'll have fun.
Well, to all of our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we'll
Yes.
talk to you next time.
Okay.
Thanks, Leslie.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's it for this episode. If you like what you hear, subscribe and leave a review on our iTunes channel. We'll see you next week.